So, welcome, Tim, and thanks for having this chat with us. Most people know Nova Entertainment for being a radio station, but hopefully you can give us a bit of an introduction in terms of what are the other things that Nova is focusing on, as well as your role there and where your focus is.
Cool, thanks, Kris. Funnily enough, when you tell people you work at Nova Entertainment, it takes people a little while to click on. Until you say Nova FM or Smooth FM, people have no idea, which in tow leads to the current conversation we have internally around our brand architecture and what that looks like long term. But effectively, we are a radio business at heart. We have Smooth FM, Nova FM. We have 12 broadcast radio stations across the Australian market. We have 10 genre-based stations which are run and delivered via DAB+, and we also have a podcast network which has 400 plus podcast titles within it. So my role at Nova is really focused on how we build a digital future for our business. Obviously, the radio landscape is changing. Digital audio is becoming more and more consumed. And for us, it's about how do we replicate the success we've had in broadcast radio, because admittedly, we punch above our weight. How do we reflect that in a digital world? But how do we also navigate the fact that audio consumption is fragmented? So for anyone in the room who listens to podcasts, you probably don't go to our app to listen to podcasts. You probably go to Spotify, Apple or Google. And the reason you do that is because discoverability. So predominantly for us on our digital assets, streaming is what's mainly consumed. So my job and my team's job as part of that is how do we stitch all of that together? How do we support the efforts of marketing and promotions? How do we drive audience? How do we drive revenue? And how do we drive capability not only in the digital part of our business, but into the broader traditional broadcast radio part of the business, which has its challenges and at times can be very scary.
Awesome, thanks, Tim. So let's get started. With a plethora, I love to use the word plethora. Nick challenges me to use it in almost every meeting that we have. So with a plethora of Martech solutions available in the market, how do you make a choice? And what are some of the prerequisites that you look for in a Martech solution? Say, boiling it down to 5 things to look for when doing an evaluation.
Yeah, look, that's a tough question, right? Because there are a lot of solutions out there. There is, 11,000 or whatever came out the other day. 190 of those are homegrown Australian technologies, which is actually quite good. For us, in the last couple of years, we've been on quite a journey around how we rebuild our customer data ecosystem and how we start to enable more tools back to the business to know more about our audiences, from a digital point of view, challenge some of the traditional radio measurement methodologies which exist out there, and then drive and promote what we're doing on those platforms. So we've been through a number of RFPs to find platforms out there. The key first step in all of that is really around the strategy and the vision. It's very, very easy to dive in to look at the technology first and then solve everything later. The only thing that ends up out of those kind of approaches is that you end up with a very expensive set of technologies sitting on your P&L, which the CFO continues to ask you what we're using it for and why we're spending so much money. So the first step is get that strategy and plan in place, know what you're trying to solve from a business challenge point of view. Work out, secondly, what the team is, what the environment is. For us as a broadcast radio business, that environment is very different to a dynamic digital environment, and there's nothing wrong with that, because our goal is to take them on a journey about how we become more digitized. So for us, when we looked at bringing technologies in, we knew that what we would have to build into our process was simplicity. How do we take the lowest common denominator user profile group, and how do we think about the solutions that we could bring in, which we knew were going to get used and would drive high utilization. Some of the benefit of that is that we were doing a lot of things for the first time, but then also a lot of people didn't know what was possible. So we kind of got to orchestrate that journey a little bit. When it came to looking at vendors in particular, navigating what's out there can be really tough. And we had a pretty strong core set of principles when we went out and looked at vendors. Some of them got kicked out after one meeting. Some of them admittedly lasted maybe 10 or 15 minutes before we ended the call, because we very quickly got a sense of their initiative and what they were trying to drive. And I think the key realization for us in a lot of cases was that if you really look at it, at times the vendor's there to sell their solution. That's at the end of the day, that's what they're KPI'd on. At the end of the day, we're KPI'd on bringing the right solution into our business. So we stuck very true to our principles and made sure that everything we took out of those vendor sessions was mapped back to that. And if there wasn't alignment there, then we had that conversation to say, sorry, but we won't be progressing with you. What are we up to? 4? The fourth one was really around giving as much information as we could. It's very easy to get carried away in a flash PowerPoint presentation, but what you have to remember sometimes is that the more that a vendor can help you understand how their solution solves your problems is dependent on how much information you share with them. So if you sit in a meeting and you share 50% or less of the information or give them less transparency and visibility about what's happening in your business, then the chances are is their solution's not going to hit the mark for you. And that's basically because, the whole adage of shit in, shit out. If you give them incomplete information, they're going to give you an incomplete solution back. And we were very, I think a lot of the vendors in our processes were very surprised at how forward and open we were, but we kind of went, well, we've signed an NDA. We'll give you the benefit of doubt that we'll give you all of this information, where we're going, what that looks like from an opportunity point of view, knowing that the more we give you, the better it's going to be for us longer term and being able to assess whether your solution is right. And then the final piece was really around having a better view of what that solution looked like in our current ecosystem. So in isolation, those technologies they all look amazing, but it's like anything. In isolation, something is always going to operate the way you need it to. So the acid test for us was, what does that look like in our business? Should we go with you as a partner and we bring your technology into our business? How do you fit with all the other technologies we have there? How do you fit within the culture? How are you going to drive utilization, and how are we going to operationalize the use of your platform longer term? Because we were dealing with some PTSD around technology procurement in the past within our business, and there were some events that happened pre my time which had also led to some ill feelings about data and technology and digital. So we wanted to make sure that we had a clear view of all of that, and we had to push vendors hard on that. And admittedly, there are always going to be vendors who just won't understand your business, and the reality is, until they come and sit in your business and be part of your meetings, be part of your culture, be part of what's going on, it's very hard for them to understand that. So you've then got to drive that through that decisioning and make sure that what we're choosing is not going to solve just the problem today, but at longer term, we know that people are going to use it. We know it's going to drive value. We know it's going to give us a return, and we know it's going to allow us to do things that we've never done before as a business.
That's pretty detailed. And I think you covered some of this, but are there any other pitfalls that you would sort of see when selecting technology, like things that just red flags, things to look out for?
I think the other one I think was mentioned in the panel before as well is that the bleed or overlap between platforms. It's very easy to look at a platform for what it is and not actually look at it and go, well, hang on. What you do, there's 20% of what you do that overlaps with what I've already got. And if we're getting to the point of a proposal or a price negotiation, then I don't want to pay for the 20% of your platform that does what I already have in my tech stack. How do you accommodate and how do you work with? And then the other part of that is value. In the current climate, I don't believe, and we probably haven't seen, we experienced a bit in Nova, but outside, we probably haven't seen people really master that value correlation of the investment to return. From a real perspective, you can look at things. If you take the example of customer acquisition costs, people go, well, I pay a $3 CPI to get a person to my application. Then it might take them, it might take me 6 months of listening to then generate $3 back, but then when you look at it deep, what's the cost of the technology? what's the cost of the people to run those campaigns, and then what does your real cost of acquisition look like there? So we think about that, and we're very lucky in the fact, though, that, you know, for us, we have my team has a broad governance across digital technology as well, so we don't have to deal with a lot of inter-team collaboration. Well, not inter-team collaboration, but we get to see multiple parts of that process. But that value piece is really, really important, especially, you know, when we look at what's happening in the economy around us right now.
Yeah, I think I've got a question coming up on that anyway. Tell us a little bit about where you've gotten to with the Novo tech stack, and what are you thinking about in the longer term? So it sounds like you've got a pretty good foundation. Where are you today, and what's next?
Yeah, look, we've got what we feel is a pretty good customer tech stack in place right now. We like to move away from calling it Martech, because for us, we believe that there's a far wider application of customer data in our business than just marketing. Marketing is a use case. So we've been very forward-thinking and anticipated what might come down the track in terms of the privacy reform, and thought about that up front, knowing that in a few months' time, we probably have to think about what that looks like in a new privacy-based world. So we've got a CDP in place, we've got an engagement platform that sits on top of that, automations now coming off the back of that and more starting to come, visualization which sits all around that, so people have more information on the work that's happening than ever before. We're challenging the traditional radio measurement system when we look at explicit listening data versus diary-based data, mobilising that customer insight around the business to help the business better understand our audiences, much to their fright in some cases when they look at what the profile of the audience is versus what they think the profile of the audiences are. We're in the process of upgrading our mobile measurement platform, which will do that across mobile and web, and then now we're starting to build I'm hoping it's going to be a pretty sophisticated data layer underneath that from a data lake perspective, which, for us, one of the challenges we have is that only a portion of our digital content's consumed in an environment where we can run a CDP, where we can collect first-party data. So we're building a data facility underneath that to try and tie together all of the off-network unknown data with the on-network known data. And then hopefully that'll lead us to the point where we start to build our own internal measurement system, mobile marketing mix modeling, predictive analytics, and all of that kind of stuff. So we're very early on, I think, in the scheme of where we want to go. But yeah, the next challenge for us is how we navigate through a tight 2023.
Yeah, well, just touching on that, and I know the panel previously spoke a little bit about budgets. In the current macroeconomic climate, how do you justify? I mean, I think you spoke a little bit about value before, but how do you justify the investment in the right tech stack, and what are some of the factors in terms of getting buy-in from the board?
Yeah, look, for us, it's always a challenge, and that's because of mainly the broader culture of the business and the level of understanding around what's possible in this area. I guess the main thing goes back to the point I made before around value. We've been very good at mapping the value on everything we do, and we've also been very good at building a great relationship with the CFO, because ultimately at times she becomes the translator for the rest of the executive team, and if it makes sense financially to her, then and it's got her sort of sign of approval, then it makes that conversation a lot easier. But for us, it's an ongoing education piece. It's really digging into what's important for the group executive and making sure that when they sit down and talk about the core KPIs of the business, us making them understand or putting them in a position where what we're trying to do makes too much sense for them to say no. So it's not always easy, it's not always successful, and we've had a lot of runs at that at times, but we continue to go back and pivot and adjust as we need to make sure we can get that message across. But we've also been very diligent about making sure that we're delivering value in short cycles. So we're rapidly delivering value back to the business where we can actually put it back in their hands and get them to hold it. So even the fact with our marketing team, that marketing team sits separately to us. We've now got them asking for stuff, which then ends up coming back to us, which go, yep, fine, we'll go and do that. That's what we want to do. But it's for the point with marketing where now I think they feel like they can't imagine a business where they didn't have the tools that we had in place. So they've become advocates for what we're doing, which helps that conversation because it means it gets up to the group executive, to the board, through different channels in the business. And we don't always have to be the ones waving the flag and asking for things.
Nice. So shifting gears just a little bit, we've been talking about the tech, but what about, tell us how at Nova, your team, the company thinks about, being customer-centric, because really no matter, how many tools and things that you've got on board, it's the people that tend to wield the larger power. And so how can businesses, ensure they're getting the most value out of, the capabilities that they've selected?
I think it goes back to looking at, when you select a solution to come in to service the strategy you've got in place, is making sure there's a runway of capability. So the customer engagement platform that we have in place, which is MoEngage, when we selected them, one of the reasons one of the pros in that process was around the fact that we felt once we brought that platform into our business that we would have 12 to 24 months of a roadmap there ready for us just to turn on functionality within that platform, which could go back to service the business. So it also allowed us to control that journey with the customer over time, so we get them used to more targeted emails, get them used to in-app notifications, move that to more trigger-based actions, then start to build that into their user journey. So I think there's still a lot of work for us to do in terms of our customer centricity because of the on-platform, off-platform fragmentation. But definitely through the use of the engagement platform, we've been able to build better dialogue with those customers and listeners who are more loyal to us. And we're starting to see the benefits off the back of that. And it also means now that we also have a better view of retention as well, because a lot of radio stations are really good at getting people in the door because we also do a lot of competitions. And we also have a lot of prize hogs out there who just love to stop by and enter to see if they can win 10 grand in a radio competition. But that customer ecosystem we have now allows us to sort of nurture those people a little bit more and try to push them along the funnel and get them to that point where they register to our digital platforms, start listening, and then we start collecting the data off the back of that.
Okay. Well, look, times are tough. I'm entering every competition I can. So
make sure you opt in.
Yeah, definitely opt in. Just have my data. Just don't, I trust you with it. Well, you're on M particle after all. So, so being the director of digital technology, in your day-to-day activities, your day-to-day activities must be aligned towards effectively, transforming those data points into actionable insights. So, talk to us about the impact of data when it comes to running engagement campaigns. Maybe share some real-world use cases of data analysis in the context of Nova, and then we'll go through a few takeaways.
I think the most interesting one, which was the one that was the director of the board found the most entertaining, was what is the profile of our listeners on our mobile app look like in comparison to what's coming out of the radio diaries. Everyone assumed that all of the digital listening would be traditionally skewed to the younger audiences. It wasn't. The majority of our app listeners are actually 45 plus, which for a lot of the business was really hard to fathom. But it's been really good for the programming team to see that information. That data analytics, like I said earlier, there's a lot of that they didn't have, and that was one of the use cases originally behind bringing a CDP in and rebuilding that customer data ecosystem, because as a business, we really didn't have much idea about what was happening on our digital platform. So we've really shifted that dial from being most of our decisions as a business being really, really gut-led to actually building some science in behind it. But again, I think there's areas of our business who haven't seen the kind of insights before that we have now provided them. And that just helps them. It's actually helped, I think, shift the culture a little bit. When I started in the business, it was very much, digital, and we sat in our own little island, and we were the digital team in a bubble, and it was like we were the outcasts. But that has shifted a little bit now, because instead of us preaching about it, and we're able to send those data and insights out, and people can actually understand the area of their business a little bit more. I guess we do a lot of promotions as a radio business, and I think they've now looked at what's available and kind of gone, wow, this is a lot more insight than what we used to have, because before they would run a competition and they get a few entries and that was it. Now they can see what that activity looks like across all the different channels. And for us, it's kind of just, it's pleasing to see them start to ask questions of us that we want them to ask us. So getting to that position for some of the data and insights is really good. But again, I think overall it just helps us build momentum, and ultimately I hope and it should lead to more investment in data for us as a business, because I think there's a long way for us to go, and I think there's a lot of really interesting things that we can do to try and better position ourselves and market against our competitors.
Awesome. So I guess thinking about a few takeaways from what we've discussed. It sounds like strategy and vision come before the tech. I mean, that's pretty much most people would sort of agree with that. But also bringing in the wrong tech can really derail what you're trying to do, and you can lead to having shelfware effectively, and not being able to invest in new capabilities because you're still paying for the stuff that you've got sitting there. The other is budget's often always available. You just have to put the right value on it, and if you can show that return and it can be proven, you're likely to get that budget that you need. And this is one that you sort of told me ahead of time, before here, was you really have to stick to your plan. You mentioned before there's 11,000 different Martech solutions out there, and it's really easy to get lost. So having your plan, having everything aligned to that, focusing on it, and not getting distracted by the next shiny new thing that pops up this week or next sounds like it was something, I think some wisdom that you sort of passed on. Was there anything else that you sort of wanted to leave everybody with as we wrap up?
Yeah, look, I think that the role of customer tech in businesses is changing. I think that as our businesses get more complex, we have to be more inclusive and collaborative with other functions of the business. And I know that I think it was part of a piece of content that went out this week about marketers collaborating with the IT team. At the end of the day, we all have different specialisms, and the value that we can bring to a business is contingent upon us being able to partner with those other specialisms in the business to make things happen, because you do get that friction at times between, I'm a marketer, I know what's best for the marketing team, and the tech guy goes, well, I know tech, I know what's best from a tech point of view. So you've got to be able to find that even balance and bring people on the journey with you. I was also at a conference earlier today, and they talked about the fact that sometimes you need to stand back and let the people do what they're good at. And if you can let people do what they're good at, then ultimately they'll come together and they'll deliver something really, really great. So I think that's really, really important. I think our longer term view at Nova is that we become the centralized sort of manager or overseer of data and technology, and then the business come to us and with their problems, and we solve them for them, and we allow them to continue to do what they're good at. We allow the marketers to do the marketing, and we do what we love to do, which is go and work out all the stuff in the background and make sure that the tech and capability and tools are there, and that it's delivering value, and that it's delivering capability to the broader business.
Excellent. Tim, thank you very much for taking the time, sharing your knowledge and insights. Hopefully it was valuable for everyone. A round of applause for Tim, please.
Thank you.